Alright guys, it is 5:22 p.m. September 27th, 2017. That is Eastern Time. Alright, we got our water vapor chart here. Time for an update. We have Maria, which has been once again upgraded to a Category 1 hurricane. But the good news about this, finally, we are beginning to see that western, or eastern rather, we're beginning to see the eastern movement of Maria. That is the jet stream moving from west to east, and we are beginning to see that influence. Now, you will notice some of these bands are still moving to the west. That is from the force of the middle part of Maria, especially being a hurricane now, back up to those 75-mile-an-hour winds. It does have the power to push these bands almost to the coast of Delaware and South New Jersey, maybe even affecting areas of Long Island before it really does that western hook. I don't think it's going to be anything serious. Again, we want to see the western movement because what that will do is pull it away from the coast more, even though it is still moving in a northwest movement. Had we not had the west movement, you would be seeing a lot of stuff on TV about South Jersey and areas of New York and Long Island. So that is good news that we're not seeing that. Even though Maria has been upgraded once again, we are seeing that shift to the east. With Lee now, Lee is a Category 3 storm continuing to grow, and there's a few reasons for that. One being that we are still in the waters kind of near Bermuda. That is warm water, so Lee is capable of staying strong and getting stronger on its own, but something aiding in it that I pointed out last night, I believe, if you notice this water vapor that's coming off Maria, it is quickly shooting down to the south near the Caribbean, basically right over top of Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, and then you can see it looping all the way back up with the force of Lee and being recycled into Lee. So that may also be adding into why Lee is still getting stronger. Even though Lee is still moving to the west, closer to the coast, even though it's nowhere near the coast, it's moving in that direction, we are beginning to see Lee take that northern movement, and that means that it's beginning to interact with Maria, believe it or not. Had we not had the jet stream moving in, we may see that Fujiwara effect we've been talking about the last couple weeks. I don't think that's going to happen, only because of the movement to the east that Maria has. So we know at least the force of the jet stream is beginning to influence Maria, and then in turn, it should do the same to Lee. Now, we were calling Lee the zombie hurricane, and a lot of that was because it basically died and then came back from the dead and became a super strong storm. But once again, guys, that we're seeing it pulled to the north of this line here, that is a good sign. That means that the chances of it being influenced by the jet stream are a lot higher. It's more than likely going to happen that way, but that's not the only concern right now. What I really want to point out to you guys, that we've been talking about this for a couple days, and it looks like it's almost coming true. We've been talking about these storms that have just been exploding all in the south here, basically covering up the continent so you couldn't see it. I made this orange so we can see them a little better. It's almost impossible to read on the radar maps with the reds and yellows, those colors on those charts. So I switched to the water vapor chart, but you can clearly see, look at all the action going on down here. And we also talked about the last week in September and the early weeks, even through October, most of October, more times than not, when we have hurricanes that affect the U.S., they form right here in the Caribbean. And what I'm seeing that I don't really like is this right here. We have a counterclockwise motion, clear motion here. It looks like it's beginning in North Florida, Georgia, and even parts of South Carolina, and you can see that water vapor being pulled down very fast into the Gulf and then spinning around in a counterclockwise motion. And when you add that, guys, when you add that force with a lot of these storms going on, those are the telltale signs that you look for when you're looking for a tropical depression. Now, this isn't just me pointing this out. This wasn't here a couple hours ago, but I want you to notice on this chart here, these are our disturbances in the Atlantic Ocean. We have Maria here, we have Lee, and they have finally noticed this on this chart. And even as early as 2 hours ago, if you notice, the 48-hour percentage chance is at 10% and the 5-day is at 20%. Now, again, I know those are low numbers, but they have to start somewhere. Just an hour ago, the 5-day low was at 10%, so they raised it to 20%. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is really because of this movement we have here, this is another water vapor chart that I've been using. I like using this one a little better because for some reason that other chart starts flashing and it's just really annoying. So we saw Lee out here. We know pretty much what's going to happen with Lee. So again, this is why I'm using this chart. I know Lee's cut off, but this is what I really want to focus on here. That's this cyclone deal going on, and it's a counterclockwise movement. And if you notice, guys, as you can even use this band as a reference, as this gets down further south, you can see these storms that are forming in the Gulf here. They are beginning to get influenced by this cyclone movement, and they're being pulled in a circle like this. We were specifically talking about this area right here where all these storms are forming to the south of Cuba, and we were talking about how they were in a clockwise movement, which you can almost see they still are, but it has slowed down significantly. These storms are almost at a standstill now, and what my concern is this cyclone movement here is now dipping very far south to the east coast of Cuba, and what that's going to do, guys, in the near future, it's probably likely at least to get a tropical depression. I'm not sure about tropical storm to hurricane yet. Some of the charts, believe it or not, are showing a hurricane developing in this area and then possibly affecting the west side of Florida and the Gulf. Now, a few days back, I don't know if you remember, but I was looking at tropical tidbits. I have it pulled up for you here. They don't have the same modeling going on for what I showed you a couple days ago because we all know these things change. But I want you to notice something here. This map, this is the Canadian model here that we were also using the other day. They are recognizing this storm. If you notice, here's Maria here, here's Lee. We're moving forward. There's the jet stream pulling both of those storms out, but then right here, guys, this is the area of concern now. This wasn't even here a couple hours ago. They are finally acknowledging this as a possible storm, and as of right now, today, they have it forming in the Gulf and basically living and dying in the Gulf. Now, this is all based on current information, so we do know those numbers are low, the 20% over 5 days, and that's why this chart doesn't show a full-blown hurricane. Now, if this chart does, or not the chart, if these cyclone movements here do begin to pick up these storms, guys, those are all the ingredients you need to develop into a hurricane. And with all the warm water here, this is why these storms are exploding so much. This is very, very, very warm water, and very warm water to the south of Florida. We've talked about this many times. But guys, you can see it with your own eyes here. This cyclone is coming off of the panhandle of Florida, as far as Georgia, and probably being pulled out of the ocean here. May even be some of it from Maria. It's hard to see here, but that doesn't mean it's not there. But guys, just check it out. That is the cyclone formation they are talking about, and the reason they had that X down in this area is because this cyclone movement is moving south. And the bad part about that is that it could start picking up these storms, which were moving in a clockwise motion yesterday. Now they're almost at a standstill, and the next step is going to be starting to reverse course and moving in a counterclockwise motion. This is exactly the situation that you run into when you are dealing with a possible hurricane. Now, because we are in late September, early October, this is where these storms tend to form. So guys, we need to keep an eye on this area. This is significant. This is a lot of action going on here, and especially with the jet stream front now moving across the U.S., and hopefully pulling Maria and Lee out, that is going to leave this area open with a zero influence, no shear winds to rip it apart, and that's where it's going to get concerning. Now again, we don't know where this possible storm could go if it does form. All the signs are here for a storm forming. It will, no matter what, affect South Florida. South Florida will get a lot of rain from this stuff just based on this cyclone movement alone. This is, regardless if it becomes a storm, it's going to pull moisture out of the Gulf and it's going to pull it right into South Florida. So South Florida is going to get some pretty crappy weather coming up, regardless whether it's a tropical storm or not. But again, guys, these are the signs you look for when you're about to see a tropical depression. So we need to keep an eye on charts like this, the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook. They do update it pretty often. This one was from 2 p.m. I know it's around 5:30 now. There should be another one coming out any minute now. But at the same time, guys, I don't really need this chart to know when I'm seeing cyclone formation. This is clear-cut cyclone stuff going on right here. This is counterclockwise movement, moving down into an area of high thunderstorm area. And you can see these storms, rather than moving clockwise, they are at a standstill now. These were clearly moving in a direction like this yesterday, and now they are becoming still, which is not a good sign. This cyclone movement is moving south, and it's going to start picking up this weather. Now, what we need to look out for is where it's going to form. Now, Cuba may help this situation. If all this stuff stays right over Cuba, that could aid in not allowing this to form at least past the tropical depression. I do think, don't quote me on this, these are just my opinions, I do think we will see a tropical depression possibly in the next couple hours, or even as early as tomorrow. It all depends on how much moisture is actually in these storms. The more white you see, the more dense they are with water vapor. So think of it that way. And now, because we have these storms becoming at a standstill, that is cause for concern, guys. So this is what we were looking out for. This is not what we wanted to see, but there it is. That is that cyclone movement. That is the first step in forming tropical depression. So in turn, we need to keep an eye on this area. We will do that. I'm going to be updating on this anytime I see a significant change. I do have another video in the works for you guys about where Maria and Lee are going and where they could affect next. But that's where we're at right now. According to the timeline, guys, we are just waiting for Maria to be moving only to the east and no more to the north. So that's what we want to happen. But once again, we do have our 20% chance of tropical cyclone or cyclone formation in the next 5 days. The next step would be a tropical depression. All right, guys, we know what to look for. Really quick, I just want to show you the jet stream. This is, I'll show you current. Here is current right now, so we can see the bottom view of the jet stream did get held up. That was in part by Pilar, that was down here in Mexico, and because of that we actually have a little bit of a break in the jet stream. And what that means is that rather than this deep U moving across to the east coast as one big shape, it actually broke, and now the top part of the jet stream is going to pull this wall here, and eventually, naturally, it's going to start moving up into the east coast. You can see that here as I pull forward. You can see this part, which was down here, is being pulled up to the northeast. And what that's going to do is that's going to clear this whole area out of any sort of pressures. And if that cyclone formation begins to form here, we have no shear winds to really rip it apart. And that's why this is so concerning to me, and that's why we're going to watch it, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I will have another update very soon, guys. Thank you.